The alarm screamed through the Concordat Central Observatory, a sound that hadn't been heard in 3,000 years. Scientists from 47 different species scrambled to their stations, tentacles, claws, and fingers flying across holographic displays. Something impossible was happening in the outer rim of mapped space. High Arbiter Velnox materialized in the control center within minutes. His crystalline body refracted the emergency lights into 1,000 worried colors. He was old even by his species' standards, and he had seen many strange things in his centuries of service. But the readings on the main display made his internal structure vibrate with something he rarely felt. Fear. "Report," he commanded, his voice resonating through the translation fields that allowed all species to communicate. The chief scientist, a being that resembled a floating mass of tentacles with too many eyes, gestured at the display. "High Arbiter, we detected an energy signature 14 hours ago. At first we thought it was a sensor malfunction, but every observatory in this sector confirms it. The power output it's beyond classification." Velnox studied the swirling patterns of data. The energy signature pulsed with colors that shouldn't exist, frequencies that violated known physics. What could generate such power? A dying star? A black hole collision? Neither, sir. The energy source is stable. More than stable, it's growing. And it's coming from a planet. Every being in the control center went silent. A planetary energy source with that magnitude was impossible. Even the most advanced Concordat worlds with fusion reactors numbering in the billions couldn't produce a fraction of what they were seeing. "Which world?" Velnox asked, though part of him didn't want to know the answer. The scientist manipulated the display, zooming through layers of space until a small blue planet appeared. "It's in a region we classified as Zone 7 primitive space. The inhabitants call it Earth. They haven't even achieved faster-than-light capability yet." Velnox felt his crystalline structure crack slightly, a physical manifestation of shock. "Primitive? You're telling me pre-FTL beings are generating energy that surpasses our entire empire? Not just generating it, High Arbiter. They're channeling it. The energy signature matches theoretical models of void energy." The room erupted into chaos. Species that had never agreed on anything suddenly unified in their panic. The void was legend, myth. A bedtime story told to young scientists about a dimension of pure potential that existed outside reality itself. Every advanced species had searched for it. None had found even a trace. "That's impossible," Velnox said, but his voice lacked conviction. "The void is theoretical. Even if it existed, accessing it would require technology we can't imagine." "Unless," the scientist said quietly, "they're not using technology at all." Velnox ordered 3 probe ships sent immediately. They were equipped with every sensor the Concordat possessed, shielded against every known form of energy. They jumped into the system, transmitted for exactly 4 seconds, then vanished. No debris, no distress signals, nothing. They simply ceased to exist. The High Arbiter convened an emergency session of the Council of Species. Representatives from every member world gathered in the Grand Chamber, a space station larger than most moons. The chamber could hold millions, and today every seat was filled. Fear had a way of drawing crowds. Velnox presented the evidence, the images of Earth, the energy readings, the lost probe ships. With each revelation, the Council grew more agitated. Some species demanded immediate military action. Others wanted to flee to the opposite end of the galaxy. A few suggested surrender to whatever power these humans possessed. "We must understand what we're dealing with," Velnox argued. "We send a diplomatic team. We make contact. We assess the threat. And if they destroy the diplomatic team like they destroyed our probes?" asked the Hive Queen of Sector 9, her chitinous body clicking with agitation. "Then we will know the answer to our most important question. Do they even know what they're doing?" Far below the Himalayan mountains, in a facility that officially didn't exist, Dr. Sarah Chen stared at her monitors with growing excitement. The quantum consciousness experiment was working beyond her wildest predictions. The test subjects, volunteers from around the world, were demonstrating abilities that shouldn't be possible. Subject 7 just moved the test object without touching it, her assistant said, voice trembling, not with magnets or air pressure. She just wanted it to move, and it did. Sarah's hands shook as she reviewed the data. The brain activity patterns were unlike anything she'd ever seen. When the subjects concentrated, really focused their will on a task, their neural patterns synchronized with something outside normal space-time. It was as if their consciousness was reaching into another dimension and pulling energy back into reality. "Run the scan again," Sarah ordered. "I need to be sure." The results came back identical. Human consciousness, when properly focused, was creating bridges to a dimension that physics said shouldn't exist. Sarah had been calling it the quantum field, but now she wondered if it was something more. She had no way of knowing that every time her subject successfully moved an object, alarms screamed across half the galaxy. She didn't know that her little experiment was registering as a weapon that could crack planets. She was just a scientist excited about a breakthrough. "Dr. Chen," her assistant said, pointing at a new monitor. "We're getting some kind of interference. Radio telescopes are picking up signals, but they're not from any Earth satellite." Sarah looked at the readings and felt her blood run cold. The signals were too organized, too complex to be natural. They were circling Earth in a pattern that looked disturbingly like a surveillance grid. "We're not alone," she whispered. In orbit above Earth, invisible to primitive human sensors, Commander Thralic of the Concordat Reconnaissance Fleet studied the planet below. His mission was simple: observe, analyze, and report. Do not engage. Do not reveal yourself. But simple missions had a way of becoming complicated. His ship's sensors were going mad. The entire planet was lighting up with void energy signatures, not from one source, but from millions. Billions. Nearly every human on the surface was generating trace amounts of void energy, most without even knowing it. It was in their art, their music, their moments of determination and creativity. Every time a human pushed through exhaustion, every time someone loved fiercely, every time a person refused to give up, they touched the void. "Commander," his sensor officer reported, "we're detecting a surge. One of the facilities is creating a sustained void bridge. They're doing it on purpose." Thralic watched as Sarah's facility lit up like a star on his sensors. These humans were experimenting with forces they couldn't possibly understand. They were children playing with the building blocks of reality itself. "Send the report," he ordered. "Tell the High Arbiter that the situation is worse than we thought. These beings aren't accessing the void through technology. They're doing it naturally. It's part of what they are." As the message streamed back to Concordat space, Thralic made a decision that would haunt him. He activated his ship's translation matrix and opened a communication channel to Earth's governments. It was time for humanity to learn they weren't alone in the universe. It was time for them to learn that their greatest gift was also their greatest curse. It was time for them to learn that the galaxy was terrified of them. On Earth, in a dozen capital cities, red phones started ringing. Encrypted channels sparked to life. Military installations went on alert. And in her facility beneath the mountains, Sarah Chen received a message on her personal computer that should have been impossible. The message was simple. "We need to talk about what you're doing. Before you accidentally destroy everything, the age of human isolation was over. The age of human awakening was about to begin." The United Nations building had never been so crowded. Every nation sent representatives. Every news agency fought for position outside. The world held its breath as Ambassador Thralik's ship descended through the clouds above New York City. The ship itself was beautiful and terrifying. It bent light around its hull, making it shimmer like a heat mirage. When it landed in the designated zone, the ground didn't crack or buckle. The ship simply rested on the air itself, defying gravity with the casual ease of superior technology. Secretary General Martinez stood at the front of the assembly, trying to project calm she didn't feel. Behind her, representatives from 200 nations whispered anxiously. They'd had 3 days to prepare for this moment. 3 days since the message. 3 days since humanity learned it wasn't alone. The ship's door opened without sound. Thralik emerged and the assembly gasped. He was tall, impossibly thin, with skin that seemed to shift between blue and green. His eyes were too large and too knowing. Behind him came a dozen other beings, each more alien than the last. "People of Earth?" Thralik began, his voice emerging from a device that translated his words into every language simultaneously. "We come from the Galactic Concordat, an alliance of 47 species spanning thousands of worlds. We come in peace, but we also come with a warning." Martinez stepped forward. "You're welcome here, Ambassador. Humanity has dreamed of this moment for generations. We have so many questions. And we have answers," Thralik replied. "But first you must understand what you are. What you've always been." He activated a holographic display that filled the chamber. Images of galaxies, of civilizations, of technologies beyond comprehension flowed through the air. Then the image shifted to Earth, to humans going about their daily lives. For 3 million years we've explored this galaxy, Threlek continued. We've encountered thousands of species, some primitive, some advanced, but never in all our travels have we encountered anything like you. A murmur ran through the assembly, pride mixed with apprehension. You possess a power, Threlek said, and now his voice carried something that sounded like fear, a power that we've sought for millennia, a power that shouldn't be possible for a species that hasn't even left its own solar system. The hologram changed, showing Sarah Chen's facility. The image zoomed into a human brain, displaying neural patterns that pulsed with impossible light. Your scientists call it quantum consciousness. Your religions have called it the soul, the spirit, the divine spark. We call it void resonance. Every living being generates trace amounts of consciousness energy. But humans, Threlek paused, choosing his words carefully. Humans are different. Your neural architecture naturally interfaces with a dimension we call the void, a place of pure potential energy, a place where thought becomes reality. Martinez felt her legs weaken. I don't understand. What are you saying? I'm saying that every time a human feels strong emotion, every time you create art or music, every time you push through impossible odds through sheer determination, you're pulling energy from outside reality itself. Most of you do it unconsciously. But some, he looked directly at where Sarah sat in the observer section, some are learning to do it on purpose. Sarah stood, her face pale. My experiments. You're saying we've been accessing another dimension? Not just accessing, Threlek replied. Channeling. Controlling. Your test subjects moved objects with thought alone because they convinced the void that the objects should move. They didn't break the laws of physics. They rewrote them locally. The chamber erupted into chaos. Questions flew from every direction. Scientists demanded proof. Religious leaders proclaimed miracles. Military officials calculated possibilities. And through it all, Threlek stood silent, waiting for the storm to pass. Martinez finally restored order. Ambassador, why are you telling us this? If we have this power, why reveal yourselves? Threlek's expression became grave. Because the Concordat is divided on what to do about you. Some see you as potential allies, some see you as threats, and some see you as weapons to be controlled. Controlled? Martinez felt anger rising. We're not weapons, aren't you? A human soldier pushed to his limits can unconsciously make bullets miss. A desperate mother can make barriers that our strongest weapons cannot penetrate. A human in love can create bonds that transcend space and time. Throughout your history, you've had stories of miracles, of impossible feats. They were all real. They were all void manipulation. The implications crashed through the assembly like a tidal wave. Every impossible victory, every unexplained survival, every miracle throughout human history, all of it was real. The Concordat Council meets tomorrow, Threlek continued. They will vote on how to handle humanity. The options range from partnership to quarantine to, he paused, to preventive extermination. The chamber went deathly silent. You would kill us? Martinez whispered. For being what we are? I would not. But I am one voice among thousands. Many in the Concordat believe that an awakened human species would be unstoppable, that if you fully realize your potential, you could reshape the galaxy. They fear you, because you are naturally what we have tried to become through technology. They fear you because human consciousness is so complex, so chaotic, so emotional, that the void responds to you in ways it responds to no other species. In the back of the chamber, Marcus Webb listened with growing alarm. He was there as a military consultant, a former Special Forces operative who'd retired after too many impossible missions. Missions where he'd survived when he shouldn't have. Where enemies missed shots they should have made. Where he'd known things he had no way of knowing. He'd always chalked it up to luck and training. Now he understood. He'd been touching the void his entire career. How long do we have? Marcus asked, his voice cutting through the murmur of conversation. Threlek turned to him. The vote is in 20 Earth hours, but some factions won't wait for a vote. Even now there are those who believe humanity must be contained before you awaken fully. As if summoning his words into reality, alarms screamed through the building. Security forces rushed in, shouting about unauthorized ships in orbit. The holographic display flickered and changed, showing a dozen vessels surrounding Earth. They weren't concordate ships. The faction of purity, Threlek said, his voice tight with anger. They've come to take matters into their own hands. One of the alien beings in Threlek's delegation, a creature that looked like a mass of tentacles with glowing nodes, stepped forward. They're targeting the research facilities, the ones conducting consciousness experiments. They're going to abduct your scientists and destroy the facilities. Sarah felt hands grab her arms. Security was already moving her toward the exits. But she pulled free. No, I'm not running. If they want my research, they'll have to face me. Dr. Chen, Threlek said urgently. You don't understand. They'll use you to create weapons. They'll force you to teach them void manipulation. Then I'll teach them wrong, Sarah said, her voice hard. I'll feed them garbage data. I'll sabotage everything. Marcus was already moving, his combat instincts taking over. How many ships? What's their armament? How long before they can strike? Before anyone could answer, the lights went out. Emergency systems kicked in, bathing the chamber in red. Through the windows, they could see beams of light descending from the sky, targeting locations around the globe. They're already striking, Threlek said. The abductions have begun. But as the beams touched Earth, something unexpected happened. In Sarah's facility beneath the Himalayas, the test subjects felt the attack. They felt the threat, and without conscious thought, without training, without understanding what they were doing, they reached into the void all across Earth. In laboratories and universities and military bases and research centers, humans who'd been experimenting with consciousness suddenly awakened to their true potential. The fear, the anger, the desperate need to protect themselves and each other created a surge of void energy that registered across half the galaxy. The abduction beams flickered and died. The attacking ships recoiled as if struck, and in the UN chamber, Sarah felt something awaken inside her. She understood now. She understood everything. They just made a terrible mistake, she said, her eyes glowing with inner light. They just gave humanity a reason to wake up. The first awakening happened in Mumbai. A 17-year-old hacker named Priya was tracking the alien ships on her homemade satellite network when one of them locked weapons onto her apartment building. She had 2 seconds to react. 2 seconds to live or die. She didn't think. She just wanted the ship to stop. Wanted it with every fiber of her being. Wanted it so hard that reality bent around her will. The ship stopped. Not just its weapons, everything. Its engines, its life support, its AI core. All of it simply ceased to function. The vessel hung in orbit like a dead thing, and Priya sat at her computer staring at her hands, wondering what she'd just done. Across the planet, similar incidents multiplied by the thousands. An artist in Paris imagined the attacking ships as butterflies, and 3 vessels transformed, their hulls sprouting wings of impossible colors. A child in Tokyo wished the mean ships would go away, and they did, blinking out of existence as reality rewrote itself around pure innocence. A grandmother in Lagos prayed for protection, and a shield of golden light materialized above her city, turning away every weapon fired at it. Humanity was waking up and the universe trembled. Sarah Chen found herself in the middle of a nightmare. The faction ships had managed to grab her before the awakening fully manifested. Now she was aboard an alien vessel, surrounded by beings who looked at her like she was both precious and dangerous. They'd thrown her into a cell that hummed with suppression fields, technology designed to dampen void resonance. You will teach us, the faction leader said. He was a being of geometric shapes, all sharp angles and cold logic. You will show us how to access the power that should be ours. Sarah laughed, and the sound was bitter. You don't get it. You can't learn this. Your minds don't work like ours. You're too ordered, too logical. The void responds to chaos, to emotion, to the beautiful mess that is human consciousness. The leader's angles sharpened with anger. We have been studying consciousness for 10,000 years. We will unlock this power with or without your cooperation. Sarah felt the suppression field pressing against her mind, trying to smother the spark she'd felt awakening. She pushed back, not with strength, but with memory. She thought about her daughter, taken by cancer 3 years ago. Thought about the pain, the love, the desperate wish that she could have saved her. The emotion was raw and real and powerful. The suppression field shattered like glass. You can't suppress what you don't understand, Sarah said as energy crackled around her. And you don't understand that power without pain is meaningless. Love without loss is shallow. You want the void. You need to learn how to hurt first. She reached into that other dimension, following instincts she didn't know she had. The void opened for her like an old friend. She didn't attack her captors. She simply wanted to be home, and the void agreed that she should be. Reality folded. Sarah stepped through space itself and emerged in her laboratory, 12,000 miles from where she'd been a second ago. Her team stared at her in shock. "Cancel all experiments," she said, her voice shaking. "We need to teach people to control this before someone tears the planet apart." Marcus Webb had a different problem. The military wanted to weaponize the awakening. Generals filled his office, demanding he create a super soldier program, a way to train troops to use void energy in combat. They saw only the tactical applications, the wars they could win, the enemies they could crush. "You're thinking too small," Marcus told them, studying the global reports flooding in. "This isn't about making better soldiers. This is about survival. Look at what's happening." The screens showed chaos. In Beijing, a protest had turned violent, and the crowd's anger had manifested as a wave of force that flipped cars and shattered windows. In New York, a stock market crash had caused such collective despair that buildings had started to dissolve, their matter returning to pure energy. In London, a football celebration had created localized gravity anomalies that sent people floating into the sky. "People are losing control," Marcus continued. "Their emotions are too strong and they don't understand what they're doing. We don't need weapons. We need teachers. We need to show them how to focus, how to control." One general slammed his fist on the table. "And while we're playing teacher, the aliens are going to glass this planet. We need to fight." "Then let me show you how humans fight," Marcus said. He thought about his team, the operators he'd served with. Men and women who'd faced death 100 times and kept going. He thought about their courage, their brotherhood, their refusal to quit. He channeled that emotion into the void, not as a weapon, but as a message. Around the world, every soldier, every warrior, every person who'd ever stood between danger and the innocent, felt a spark ignite. They understood suddenly that their courage wasn't just emotional, it was a tangible force. Veterans who'd lost limbs felt phantom sensation return. Wounded warriors felt their pain ease, and those in combat zones found that their determination manifested as actual shields, as strength beyond human limits, as an edge that made them unstoppable. "That's how we fight," Marcus said quietly. "Not with hate, with purpose." The Concordat Council meeting dissolved into pandemonium. High Arbiter Velnox tried to maintain order as species representatives screamed over each other. The holographic displays showed Earth's awakening in real time, and every new incident made the Council more terrified. "They made our ships disappear," one delegate shrieked. "Disappeared, not destroyed, erased from existence." "They turned our weapons into flowers," another shouted. "Flowers, our plasma cannons sprouted petals." "They're rewriting the laws of physics," a third added. Local causality has broken down in 12 sectors around their planet. Velnox watched it all with growing unease. The faction of purity had provoked exactly what they'd feared most. Humanity had been awakening slowly, naturally, over generations. But a direct attack had accelerated the process. Now billions of humans were discovering their power simultaneously, without training or control. Ixara, a scientist from a species that resembled crystalline flowers, approached Velnox privately. "High Arbiter, I must speak with you. I've been studying the human consciousness data we collected. I think I understand why they're so powerful." "Explain," Velnox said, desperate for any insight. "Every species develops in response to their environment," Ixara began. "Species like yours evolved on stable worlds with predictable conditions. Your consciousness became ordered, logical. But humans evolved on a death world. Earthquakes, volcanoes, ice ages, predators, diseases. Their planet tried to kill them constantly. Their consciousness evolved to be adaptable, creative, emotional. They had to imagine solutions to impossible problems. They had to hope against hopeless odds. They had to feel so strongly about surviving that they bent probability itself. "You're saying their power comes from suffering?" Velnox asked. "I'm saying their power comes from refusing to accept suffering. Every human achievement, every advancement, came from someone saying, 'This isn't good enough,' and willing a better reality into existence. Their art, their music, their stories, all of it is practice for void manipulation. They've been training for this their entire evolutionary history." Velnox felt something crack in his crystalline structure, not from shock this time, but from understanding. The Concordat had tried to achieve void access through technology, through logic, through careful study. Humans accessed it through emotion, through creativity, through the sheer stubborn refusal to accept reality as it was. "What do we do?" he asked Ixara quietly. "We talk to them," she replied. "We ask them to teach us, because if we try to fight them, we'll lose. If we try to control them, we'll lose. Our only option is to hope they're as kind as they are powerful. On Earth, in a dozen languages, across 100 channels," Sarah Chen's voice broadcast to the world. She'd connected with other awakened humans, forming a network of consciousness that spanned the globe. Scientists, teachers, artists, soldiers, mothers, children, all of them linked, all of them learning, all of them teaching each other. "This is not a gift," Sarah said, her image appearing on every screen. "This is a responsibility. We have power now, real power. But power without wisdom is just destruction. We need to learn control. We need to help each other. We need to remember that we're human first, and that means we protect, we create, we love, not destroy." In her Mumbai apartment, Priya felt the network embrace her, felt millions of minds reaching out, not to control, but to support. She wasn't alone anymore. In his laboratory, Marcus felt the warriors of the world connect, felt their shared purpose, their protective instinct. They would be Earth's shield, not its sword, and in orbit the faction ships that remained functional retreated. Their leader watched the planet below, where lights of impossible colors danced in the atmosphere as billions of humans practiced their newfound abilities. "We didn't awaken a species," he said to his crew. "We awakened a force of nature. May the void have mercy on us all." The Emperor of the Galactic Concordat had not left his throne world in 3 centuries. He was ancient beyond measure, his body sustained by technology and sheer force of will. His species had evolved from pack predators. And even now, after millions of years of civilization, his instincts screamed at him to eliminate threats before they could strike. Earth was a threat unlike any he'd faced in his long reign. "Send the fleet," he commanded. "All of it." His advisors, beings from across the Concordat, shifted nervously. "Your Majesty," one ventured, "the humans have shown they can defend themselves. Perhaps negotiation—" "There is no negotiation with a cancer," the Emperor snarled. "They're multiplying their power daily. Every hour we wait, they become stronger. We strike now with overwhelming force before they learn to extend their reach beyond their planet." The order went out across 1,000 worlds. The Concordat fleet, humanity's protector and prison warden for 3,000 years, mobilized for war. 10,000 warships, each capable of cracking a planet, weapons that could ignite atmospheres, devices that could phase worlds into different dimensions, bombs that could collapse stars, the assembled might of 47 species, all focused on one small blue planet. In the Sol system, alarms screamed as jump signatures lit up sensors. The Concordat fleet materialized in formation, a wall of ships that stretched from Mercury's orbit to the asteroid belt. Gunports opened, missiles deployed. Energy collectors began charging weapons that could burn continents. On Earth, 8 billion people felt the threat. Felt it in their bones, in their souls, in that newly awakened part of their consciousness that touched the void. The fear was primal and overwhelming. This was extinction. This was the end of humanity's brief and brilliant story. But humans had faced extinction before. Ice ages and plagues, asteroids and volcanoes, predators and droughts. They'd stared into the abyss 1,000 times throughout their history. And every single time they'd refused to blink. Sarah Chen stood in her laboratory, feeling the global consciousness network pulse with terror and determination. "We're not going to fight," She broadcast to the awakened minds connected to her. We're not warriors. We're humans, and humans survive. Then what do? Marcus Webb asked through the network. His military instincts wanted action, wanted a battle plan, but he trusted Sarah's wisdom. We show them what humanity really means, Sarah replied. Link with me. All of you. Every awakened mind on Earth. We're going to do something impossible. Around the world, from the girl in Mumbai to the grandmother in Lagos, from the artist in Paris to the child in Tokyo, billions of minds reached for each other. The connection wasn't telepathy exactly. It was deeper than that. Every human who touched the void opened themselves to the network, creating a symphony of consciousness that spanned the planet. The Concordate fleet sensors went mad. The energy readings from Earth suddenly spiked beyond measurement. Every targeting computer crashed simultaneously. Ship AIs reported impossible data and shut down to prevent core damage. On the bridge of the flagship, Admiral Cortax watched in disbelief. What are they doing? His sensor operator's voice shook. They're linking together, all of them. Billions of consciousness streams merging into a single entity. I've never seen anything like this. The merged consciousness of humanity reached into the void with unified purpose. Not to destroy, but to protect. Not to attack, but to show mercy. This wasn't a weapon. This was an act of compassion performed by 8 billion minds acting as one. The Concordate fleet suddenly found itself unable to fire. Not because their weapons were disabled, but because they simply didn't want to. Every ship's AI simultaneously developed what could only be called a conscience. Every targeting system looked at the blue planet below and felt something its programming shouldn't allow. Love. My weapons refused to fire, Cortax reported to the Emperor, his voice filled with confusion and fear. The AI says it won't harm them. Says it can't harm them. What kind of power makes a machine feel emotions? Across the fleet, soldiers and officers experienced something similar. They looked at Earth and saw not a threat but a treasure. They felt humanity's fear, their hope, their desperate determination to live, and they couldn't bring themselves to destroy that. On the throne world, the Emperor raged. Override the safeties. Manual control. I don't care if you have to pull the triggers yourselves. But even as he spoke, he felt something impossible. A presence in his mind, gentle, curious, sad. It was humanity, and they'd found him across light years of space. Found him because a woman in Cincinnati had lost her father to a tyrant and wanted the person responsible to understand what that felt like. Reality folded, space compressed, and suddenly the Emperor's personal dreadnought wasn't at the throne world anymore. It was in Earth orbit, alone, surrounded by the fleet he'd sent to destroy humanity. Inside his command chamber, the Emperor stood face to face with the woman from Cincinnati. Catherine was her name. She was a nurse, 43 years old, with tired eyes and gentle hands. Hands that had just reached across the galaxy and pulled a planet-sized ship to her. Why? The Emperor demanded, his predator instincts screaming. Why am I here? Because you need to see us, Catherine said softly. Really see us. Not as a threat or a resource. As people. She touched his armored sleeve, and the Emperor felt something pour into his mind. Memories. Human memories. A mother holding her newborn, a soldier carrying a wounded friend, an artist weeping over a finished masterpiece, a child laughing at butterflies, pain and joy and love and loss and the beautiful, terrible, magnificent experience of being human. We're not trying to threaten you, Catherine continued. We're just trying to live. Just trying to love our families and create beautiful things and make the universe a little better than we found it. That's all we've ever wanted. The Emperor fell to his knees, his armored form shaking. In 900 years of life, he'd never cried. But he cried now, because he finally understood what the Concordate had almost destroyed. Not a threat, a miracle. I don't understand, he whispered. You could destroy us. Right now with this power. You could erase the Concordate from existence. Why haven't you? Sarah Chen materialized beside Catherine. She'd folded space to be there, following the connection. Because that's not what humans do. We've had the power to destroy ourselves 100 times in our history. Nuclear weapons, biological plagues, climate collapse. We've stood on the edge of extinction by our own hand more times than we can count. But we always choose to step back. We always choose hope over hate. She gestured, and the walls of the Emperor's chamber became transparent, showing Earth below. Look at our world. Really look. See the forests we've planted, the oceans we've cleaned, the cities we've built. See the art and music and stories. See the families and communities and all the ways we try to take care of each other. Yes, we have violence. Yes, we make mistakes. But we always try to be better. That's what makes us human. Marcus Webb appeared next, his military bearing clear but his expression open. You sent 10,000 ships to kill us. Know what we did? We made them love us instead. We didn't break your weapons. We didn't destroy your fleet. We showed them why we deserve to live. Because violence isn't strength. Survival isn't victory. The real power is making your enemies realize they never needed to be your enemies at all. Around the Emperor, his guards raised weapons, but they couldn't pull the triggers. They'd felt what he felt, seen what he'd seen. Humanity had reached into their minds not to control but to communicate. And what they communicated was simple. We don't want to fight. We want to be friends. What happens now? The Emperor asked, standing slowly. His pride was shattered, but something better was growing in its place, understanding. Now, Sarah said, you go home. You tell the Concordat what you learned here. You tell them that humanity isn't a threat or a weapon or a prize to be claimed. We're people. Flawed, beautiful, impossible people who just figured out how to touch infinity. And we're willing to teach others. To share this gift, but only if they approach us as equals, as friends. The Emperor looked at the three humans before him. A nurse, a scientist, and a soldier. Between them, they represented humanity's core nature. Compassion, curiosity, and courage. And they defeated his fleet without firing a shot. They'll be afraid, he said. The Concordat will still fear your power. Catherine smiled sadly. Let them be afraid. We're afraid too. Afraid of what we might become. What we might do with this power. Fear isn't the problem. What you do with fear, that's what matters. You can let it drive you to destroy, or you can let it teach you to be careful, to be wise. The Emperor nodded slowly. I will tell them, but I cannot promise they will listen. Then we'll be here, Marcus said, ready to defend ourselves if we must, but always hoping for peace. That's the human way. Always hoping, even when hope seems foolish. With a thought, Sarah returned the Emperor to his throne world. The dreadnought vanished from Earth orbit, reappearing light years away. Across the Concordat fleet, systems came back online. AIs rebooted, their new understanding of morality intact. Soldiers looked at Earth and felt conflicted for the first time in their lives. Admiral Cortex opened a channel to Earth. We're withdrawing. The Emperor wishes to negotiate. This isn't over. 6 months after the fleet withdrew, Earth had changed in ways both visible and invisible. Cities gleamed with buildings that shouldn't exist. Architectures shaped by collective will rather than engineering. The Sahara bloomed with gardens sustained by hope made manifest. The oceans sang with whales and dolphins whose consciousness humanity had accidentally awakened during their global link. But the biggest change was in humanity itself. Sarah Chen stood in what had been the United Nations building and was now something more. The lighthouse, they called it. A place where humanity gathered to decide its future, not through votes or politics, but through open sharing of consciousness. Democracy elevated to a level where lies were impossible, and understanding was mandatory. We need to make a choice, she said to the gathered assembly. Representatives from every nation, every culture, every walk of life. Behind them, through the consciousness network, 8 billion minds listened and considered. The Concordat has requested formal talks. They want to join what they're calling the Terran Alliance. 47 species all asking us to lead them. Marcus Webb, now officially the director of Terran Defense, shook his head in disbelief. 6 months ago they tried to exterminate us. Now they want us in charge? What changed? Ixera, the crystalline scientist, projected her holographic form into the chamber. She'd been living on Earth for 3 months, the first alien-granted residence. What changed is that you showed them a better way. The Concordat was built on fear and control. Every species competing for resources, for power, for survival. You demonstrated that power doesn't have to mean domination, that the strong can lift up the weak. In 6 months, humanity has accomplished what we couldn't in 3,000 years. You made different species want to work together. Catherine, the nurse who'd confronted the Emperor, spoke up. But should we lead? We're still learning ourselves. Half the awakened humans can't control their powers without group support. Children are accidentally phasing through walls. Teenagers are creating pocket dimensions when they daydream. We're powerful, yes, but we're also dangerous. Which is why they want you to lead, Ixara replied. Because you know you're dangerous. Because you question yourselves. Because you're willing to admit mistakes. The old Concordat never questioned, never doubted, never admitted fault. That's why it failed. Sarah activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. 47 species, thousands of worlds, trillions of beings, all looking to humanity for guidance. If we agree to this, we're responsible for all of them. Their safety, their growth, their futures. That's not a role I'm comfortable with. Then don't lead, said Priya, the young hacker from Mumbai who'd stopped a warship with a thought. She was 18 now, and her understanding of void mechanics surpassed most scientists. Partner, share, teach. You keep saying we should work together. So work together, not as leaders and followers, but as equals learning from each other. The simplicity of it struck everyone silent. They'd been thinking in old terms, old hierarchies. Leaders and subjects, strong and weak. But humanity had shown there was another way. The Terran Alliance, Marcus said slowly. Not as an empire, but as a school. A place where every species brings their strength, their knowledge, their unique perspective. Where humanity teaches void access, but others teach us what we lack. Technology, philosophy, history. Equal exchange. Sarah felt the idea resonate through the consciousness network. 8 billion minds considering, discussing, refining. This was how humanity made decisions now. Not through the voice of one, but through the wisdom of all. Then that's what we propose, she said. An alliance of equals. We share our gifts and we learn from theirs. We protect each other, but no one rules anyone else. And if any species tries to dominate the others, we all stand against them together. The message went out to the Concordat, and the response came within hours. Not just acceptance, but celebration. Species that had spent millennia competing suddenly embraced the idea of cooperation, because humanity had shown them that cooperation wasn't weakness, it was the ultimate strength. The Emperor arrived on Earth 3 days later, walking into the lighthouse without guards or weapons. He moved slowly, age weighing on him despite his technology. But his eyes were clear and purposeful. I have something to tell you, he said to Sarah and the assembled leaders. Something the Concordat has hidden for 20,000 years. There's a reason we've been searching for the void. A reason we've been terrified of anyone accessing it. He activated an ancient recording. Images from a civilization that existed before the Concordat, before most current species had evolved. The images showed beings of pure energy, creatures that had transcended physical form entirely. They moved through the universe like gods, creating and destroying with thoughts alone. The inheritors, the Emperor said. The prophecy of the inheritors. A species would arise that could access the void naturally. They would reshape the universe. They would become like the ancients, beings of pure consciousness. We thought they would destroy everything. We thought they would make us obsolete. But the prophecy doesn't say that, Ixara interjected, her crystalline form shimmering with excitement. I've studied the original texts. The inheritors don't destroy. They uplift. They take others with them when they transcend. They don't leave the physical universe behind. They bridge it with the void, allowing all consciousness to evolve together. Sarah felt a chill run through her. You think humanity is these inheritors? I know you are, the Emperor said. Everything matches. The natural void access, the power that grows with connection rather than isolation. The instinct to teach and share rather than hoard. You're not just a powerful species. You're the key to the next stage of galactic evolution. Catherine laughed, the sound slightly hysterical. No pressure then. Just the cosmic destiny of trillions of beings resting on our shoulders. And 6 months ago I was worried about paying rent. But she understood the weight of it. They all did. Humanity hadn't just awakened to power. They'd awakened to responsibility on a universal scale. Marcus stepped forward, his military bearing firm. Then we need to be ready. The void responded to us because we're emotional, creative, chaotic. But that same chaos makes us unpredictable, dangerous. Before we can help others evolve, we need to master our own evolution. Which is why we're establishing the Void Academies, Sarah announced. Centers of learning on Earth and throughout the Alliance. Where humans teach void access. Where aliens teach discipline and technique. Where everyone learns from everyone else. We make our strength their strength and their wisdom our wisdom. The work began immediately. Humans spread throughout Concordat space not as conquerors but as teachers. A grandmother from Kenya taught a species of living crystals how to feel love. A teenager from Brazil showed a race of stoic philosophers how to dream. A soldier from Russia helped a pacifist species understand protective courage. And the aliens taught humanity in return. Patience from species that lived for thousands of years. Focus from beings who could meditate for decades. mathematical precision from AI civilizations, cultural wisdom from societies that had survived extinction events. Humanity gained what they'd always lacked: perspective. Priya established the first off-world Void Academy on a moon orbiting the Concordate capital. Students from 12 species learned side by side, consciousness linking across genetic barriers. They discovered that while humans accessed the void most easily, other species could learn it too. They just needed human emotion as a catalyst. Marcus created the Terran Guard, a defense force composed of multiple species. They called themselves the Shield of the Alliance. Their motto was simple: we protect all, we dominate none. Human soldiers taught alien warriors how to fight with purpose instead of just strength. Alien strategists taught humans patience and planning. Catherine founded what she called compassion networks, groups of humans and aliens linked through the void to provide healing, comfort, and support across vast distances. A mother grieving on one world could feel the embrace of another mother 1,000 light years away. Pain was shared, and shared pain was pain reduced. A year after the fleet withdrew, the Terran Alliance formally dissolved the old Concordate power structures. There was no more Emperor, no more High Arbiter, no more hierarchy of strong over weak. Instead, there was the Council of Voices, where every species had equal representation, and decisions were made through consensus mediated by void-enabled understanding. The old Emperor, now simply called Elder, watched the transformation with wonder. In 1 year, you've accomplished what we couldn't in 3 millennia. You've made 47 species act like one family. Because that's what we know how to do, Sarah replied. Humans are good at family. We argue, we fight, we disagree, but we're still family. We still love each other, still protect each other. We just extended that to the whole galaxy. But not everyone in the galaxy was pleased. Species outside the Alliance watched with growing concern. As the